I brought some notes so I don't lie. My name's Kathy and I'm an alcoholic. So my sober date is August 1st, 2009. I have a sponsor who has a sponsor who has a sponsor. I have a home group. I go to at least 3 meetings a week, and along with church on Sundays, I do consider going to church as part of my program because it improves my conscious contact with God. I'm here to share my experience, strength, and hope. For some of you, if you don't know what that means, because for a long time I didn't know what that meant when I was in the program. My experience is to draw others in by our shared experiences. My strength is what happened. What was that pivotal moment when the alcoholic realizes that enough is enough? And then what did that alcoholic do? And hope is what is the alcoholic doing now or has been doing to stay sober? So my experience is vast and long. Interesting because I spent the last 18 months right down the street here. So I found alcohol when I was 13 years old. And the first time I got drunk. I was at my sister's high school graduation party. And my job was to go around and pick up empties and put them in this garbage. And of course, I started drinking, glass. It sounds disgusting now, but I started drinking when the stuff was left over. And I got quite plastered. And I tried to sneak past my mom to go to bed, but apparently she saw me. Because later my dad came in my room and he goes, "Your mom said that you were drunk." So I proceeded to try to get out of bed, but I fell out of bed. And then incoherently lying to my dad, "I'm not drunk." And he goes, "Well, I'm just going to tell your mom you were sleeping." What's interesting is that pattern of me lying and my dad protecting followed me through my whole drinking career. Me lying, my dad protecting. Me screwing up, my dad saving. And when I mentioned that to him one time, he goes, "I tried to stop you several times, made you quit your job, I made you do this, I made you do that." But I'm learning now for my son that there is absolutely nothing anyone, especially a parent, can do to stop your child from doing what they are going to do. So I graduated from high school. Then I went to Western Washington State University and flunked out of that twice. When I got into drugs, because drugs are part of my story, my life really, what I would say, took off, but went down. I sincerely cannot figure out how I stayed out for so many years. But what I would do is I had this pattern. Life would get really bad, so I'd stop drinking and using, and my life would build up, and then I'd tear it down. And I did that several times in my life. Several times. Well, and that's where you read my part I was going to read. Is that where the fact is most alcoholics, for reasons obscure, have lost the power of choice of drink. Our so-called willpower becomes practically non-existent. We are unable at certain times to bring into consciousness with sufficient force of the memory of the suffering and humiliation, even a week or a month ago. We are without defense of the first drink. And that was me. So the last time I had my life built up and tore it down, I was married, I had a child, and I was the top named real estate agent over on the east side for Skyline Properties. And then I started drinking. And then I got into meth. And then I started going into homes and burglarizing them with my real estate license. And they finally caught me. And I was on the front page of the news. And I had channel 13, 4, 5, and 7 out in front of my house. This was back in 2001. They coined me the lockbox burglar. Very embarrassing. My dad was in Hawaii. They even had the news station over there. I swear there was nothing going on in Seattle at the time. It sounds bad, but I was never so happy in my life for this family in Pierce County to be killed because I took the focus off me, of course, because it was all about me. So from there, I went to prison. Prison's not a pleasant place to be, by the way. Prison is really unpleasant, especially if you're a girl from Bellevue. And it's really unpleasant. My dad would write me letters, Just because you're surrounded by unpleasant people doesn't mean you have to forget where you're from. And I told my dad, if I act like a Bellevue girl here, I'll get beat up. Okay, so just, just because you're surrounded by unpleasant people. I was surrounded by a bunch of criminals is what it was. Geez, so I got out of prison and I couldn't stay sober because I wasn't in the program. So I got put into drug court. I was the longest running person in drug court. I was in drug court for almost 3.5 years. And what would happen is in drug court, you don't pass a couple UAs, and then you get like to put in the jury box, and then you put the jury box all day, and then you get, eventually I would build up to when they were going to send me back to prison, and I'd clean my act up. And I'd go back down to 0. And I'd do it again. Well, after 3.5 years, they said, nope, go back to prison. So I did go back to prison. And it still wasn't pleasant, and it still wasn't fun. So when I got out of prison, I stayed clean and sober to build my life up a little bit. But then, of course, as an alcoholic, I can't. It's like gripping the table. I can tell you, you can grip that table for a period of time, but your arm is going to give out. And I went back out, and my life got really bad. In the last 18 months of my drinking, I lived in the Airlane Motel down the street here. My whole world consisted of the Airlane Motel and the Arco gas station. I was a prostitute. I got arrested one time for prostitution, and I actually called my dad to bail me out. And at first, I didn't want to tell my dad why he had to bail me out. He said, I'm going to find out when I go to the bail bondsman. Now here, I had been to prison over burglary and everything like that. And when I told him what I was in jail for, it was the first time in my life he ever said, I am so disappointed in you. I mean, I had really gone far down the scale. So for the last 18 months, besides going to jail once in a while, I would every day get up, do what I had to do to get enough money so I could get as drunk and as high as I could to live with the intolerable situation I had put myself in. I'd go to bed praying to God that motel would burn down with me in it, wake up the next day, cursing God that it didn't, get enough money, do what I had to do to get as drunk and high as I can, etc., etc. 18 months in a row, that's what I did. Once in a while, break it up, go to jail, but that's what I did. So what happened? An old boyfriend showed up at the motel. He was clean and sober. And he asked me, what are you doing? Now, at this time, I had stopped the heroin. I was just smoking crack and drinking. And I said, I have a plan. Now, I have since learned, you guys all up, but I have since learned from listening to my own son now, when an alcoholic says, I have a plan, and they're still drinking, oh my God, the things that are going to come out of their mouth. So my plan was, I'm going to get some meth to get off the crack and the alcohol. Well, he happened to know my dad. And he called my dad and told him my plan. And my dad said, why don't you go to treatment? Hey, that's a better plan. But I found out in treatment, too, that if you're in the middle of using and drinking, your alcoholism will not allow you to come up with that plan. Literally. You might think I'm going to go to AA. You might think I'm going to go to treatment, but to stop, to say I'm going to stop, it won't let you do that. You have to give your brain a rest. That's what I found out in treatment. If I've got an alcoholic brain and I'm still feeding that, it'll do anything it can to stop. You might as well have said, cut off your right arm, everything will be okay. But be like, what? But at that point in time, I was desperate enough that sounded like a better idea. So I went to treatment. And I was 7 months in a 6-month treatment center program because I was so messed up. I was living like a street urchin, only I wasn't like Oliver and the Artful Dodger because I was a lot older than they were, But I had all of my morals and values and thinking and everything that I was raised with was out the window. And I had to find it somehow. I had to somehow find who I was. So a couple of interesting things about when I went to treatment. That's all the notes I have because that's my past. That's everything. So when I was in treatment, For one, when I got into treatment, I was writing 07 on all my paperwork. And the lady goes, Madame, do you know that the year is 09? And I'm like, what happened in 2008? Oh my God. You know, I had no idea, but it was that 18 months. I was there, you know, I don't know what happened to it. So also when I was in treatment, you know, I started meeting people, going to meetings, people would come in. And I was given the one thing that I was lacking in my life, and that was hope. Because these people would come into the treatment center and they would share their experience, their strength, and their hope. And I met my first sponsor there. So when I was in treatment, I get this notice. I don't know how they found me there. King County goes and sends me this notice with one of my prostitution charges. I had to go to court in Bellevue. And I knew that if that did not go well, I would be back in prison. Okay, so my new sponsor, Jerry, and she takes me down there. And we're in the parking lot. She goes, okay, let's pray. And I go, yeah, let's pray. I get out of this. She goes, no, we got to pray for God's will. It might be God's will that you go back to prison. And I'm like, oh, no, I don't want to go back. So we pray. And my last name is Trotzel, so it starts with a T. And I'm always last. So we're in there, sitting there, and now I know I'm going to be going next. The prosecuting attorney gathers up all of her notes and notebooks and stuff and leaves the room. I get up there, calls my name. And my attorney starts to do his little rigmarole of stuff, you know, and the judge goes just like this. He goes, The prosecuting attorney obviously doesn't think this is that important of a case. So I'm just going to dismiss it. And I'm like, that had never happened. I've been to jail 52 times, you guys. That has never happened. Okay? I've been to jail 52 times. I've never had we're just going to dismiss this. It's like, here, you come back, and then you don't go back, you know. So I just was shocked. And as we're leaving, the prosecuting attorney is walking back in. She left for my case. She walked out for my case. I don't know what happened. And I said to my wife, what happened? She goes, well, I don't think you're going to have any problem with the God now, are you? Because it's like getting hit upside the head with a spiritual 2x4. I now believe there was a God, and he did not want me to go back to prison, you know? So when I was in treatment, I had to start thinking about, what am I going to do with my life? I'm not a very good criminal. My dad already told me I can't really make that. I was pawning things in my own name, you know? And so I'm not a very good criminal. And I don't want to go back to being a prostitute. I flunked out of the university and just about every community college this side of the mountains. And I really didn't know what I was going to do. But what I did know is I went to meetings. I got, 7 months in treatment. After 30 days, you can go out to meetings. I started going to meetings. I started meeting people in Burien. I had no idea Burien even existed. I knew Georgetown and that side of Seattle, but I didn't know Burien existed. I had no idea where that was. And here I am in Burien and Des Moines. And as it started getting nearer to getting out of treatment, my dad said, so where do you want to live? I'll pay for a place for you to live for a couple months until you get back on your feet. And I said, Burien. And he goes, you don't know anyone in Burien. And I go, I know everyone in Burien. Because everyone I had nothing waiting for me in the East Side. Those were all drug addicts and alcoholics and stuff. I knew all those guys. But the only people I knew out here were people in Alcoholics Anonymous. And that's when it says, I'm trying to find it, but it says, you have to put 100% into this, okay? At least I had to. My whole life was built before on this foundation, like you were talking about, drugs and alcohol. Where I lived, what I did, what I didn't do. Everything was built on this foundation. Now that's smashed. What am I going to do? So I built my life with the foundation of Alcoholics Anonymous. And when I got out of treatment and I wasn't in school, I was going to 3 meetings a day. I would go to 3 meetings a day. In this program, I met some very interesting, very nice people. I wondered what they wanted from me. Being a prostitute, I thought it was a sex club. I'm serious. I did. Why are these people so nice? What do they want from me? What do they want? Okay. Don't want anything. They want to see you. I wonder why this guy, Phil, would always say, it's like I just get this great feeling when I see someone get out of treatment. And a couple years later, I see them and they're still doing the deal. It just makes me really happy. And I thought, that guy has got to get a life because he has got no life. If that's what makes this guy happy. Guess what? I started going to treatment centers. And I used to love seeing people get out of the treatment center and show up at one like, oh, yeah, I saw you. Yeah, okay, so, yeah, and I do have a life. So one thing, it was funny, because one thing I was really afraid of was Friday nights. Now, don't get me wrong, I drank all the time. But I was really afraid of Friday nights. So a friend of mine, Phil and Debbie, they'd meet me at Pass It On at the 5 o'clock meeting. After the meeting, I'd go to their house for Friday night, spend the night there. He would try to watch movies. Debbie and I would talk. And get up next day, go to an 8 o'clock meeting, drink around drink around the property. He'd take me back up to Pass It On. And they did that for almost 2 years, for over a year and a half. Every Friday night, because I was afraid of Friday nights. And until I got a car, that's what they did. What they also did for me was, when I was out of treatment for a couple of weeks, Phil came up to me and said, hey, do you want a house sit for us? I go, Phil, you know I used to rob houses. He goes, oh my God, are you gonna rob our house? I go, no. And he goes, great, will you house sit for us? And I did. And I did a really good job. Except they fed their dogs bacon because they wouldn't eat. They had me pegged. And they slept in the bed. I wondered, how do you get all these dogs in the bed? Because the dogs don't sleep in the bed. Okay. But what that did is he trusted me, and I became trustworthy. So again, I still didn't know what I was going to do. And Phil said to me one time, he goes, you know, I love going to meetings with people, because you have a meeting in the car on the way, you have the meeting, then you have a meeting in the car on the way back, you know. So I'd go to meetings because I didn't have a car at the time, and Phil asked me, he goes, what are you going to do with your life? I go, I don't know, I'm still trying to figure that out. And he goes, why don't you go back to school? I go, I flunked out of school, I can't do that. He goes, were you drinking? I go, yeah. He goes, what would happen if you weren't drinking, if you took that out of the equation? I got a 4-point. I had a 4-point the whole time I went to the college. And I laughed because you take drinking out of occasion, I couldn't do anything. I got a 4-point. When I graduated from school, I think everybody else in my graduating class thought I was really somewhat important, because I had a whole bunch of people from AA show up at my graduation, and they stationed themselves in various places of the auditorium. So the whole time I'm walking around, people are clapping and standing up, and people are looking at me going, what is that lady, you know? But so when I graduated, then my sponsor at the time said, before I graduated, she goes, have you looked for jobs? I go, I got 8 felonies. I can't look for a job. She goes, oh, how many times have you been turned down? I go, well, none. I haven't tried. She goes, when you've been turned down 25 times because of your felonies, we'll revisit this again. He goes, but also because of your felonies, you need to keep your expectations low. So in other words, don't apply for, bioengineering. Because I was looking at those jobs. When I'm looking for a job, I'm looking at bioengineering and stuff like that. Oh, you got a 2-year degree doesn't do it, by the way, you guys. You got to have more than a 2-year degree for bioengineering. But so I did. So I applied. I decided to start out part-time. So I applied for a couple jobs, and 3 jobs wanted to hire me. Who knew? So I worked a part-time job at a construction company, and in that place, still going to meetings. And now I wasn't going to school and I was working part-time, but I was still going to 2 meetings a week, or at least 1 a week. 2 meetings a day, or 1 every day. So 7 a week. And then that job went out of business. So I had to look for another job. And then I found another job right away. In fact, I was so worried, financial insecurity. I only had a few years sober, and I was really, really worried. So when I got my last paycheck out of that job, I paid my rent for 3 months in advance, paid my insurance 3 months in advance, and I only had like $100 left in the bank. Then my sponsor said, I'll give you a couple $100 you can pay me when you get a job. And I go, I don't know when I'm going to get a job. She goes, I'll bet you have me paid back in a month. And I did, because I got a job right away. And I had my rent and everything paid months in advance. So, it's amazing what you can do when you're sober, because I would always think about, God, it took me so long to find jobs, Well, no wonder. If you don't get up till noon, and you start looking at jobs about 2, most places are only open till 5, and then you go out and get drunk that night, and then you don't show up for interviews, with alcohol on your breath. I remember one time when I was drinking, I had a job interview for a hamburger joint, and they didn't hire me. And he goes, have you been drinking? I go, not today. When you drink every day, though, you know what? It comes out in your pores and people can smell it. So I was working for the screen print company. I love that job. Love that job. It was frustrating at times, but I loved that job. COVID put him out of business. I lost another job. Oh. And I found another job. And this is where I had to put my program first. I got a job at this trucking company, and my hours were 10:30 to 7. When do you go to meetings? When am I going to go to meetings? 10:30 to 7. So I would go to this 8 a.m. meeting. It was the same 4 people, so the same 4 things, and I wasn't getting anything out of it. And then my company decided to move me to Sumner, 10:30 to 7. And I started becoming disconnected from AA. I remember I went home to my roommate who's in the program, and I said, I feel really disconnected from AA. And she goes, you're going to feel more disconnected when the meetings start back up and they don't have as many on Zoom. And I thought, uh-oh. And I talked to my sponsor. My sponsor said, you know, when you took that job, we said we'd try it because you'd be making more money there, you remain in your life, and it was in Kent, and now you got moved to Sumner. You know, I even got a new car. I went and bought a new car, and I'm telling you, the drive is exactly the same distance that was in my old car. That new car did not make it up, didn't make a difference. It was still the same amount of distance to that. You know, I thought my dad's like, of course it would be. I go, well, I thought it would make a difference. And he goes, no, it might be more comfortable, but it doesn't make a difference. So I went to my boss, whose mother had found out her mother was in the program. Her mother died sober. I said, I'm not quitting now, but I want to do the right thing. And I cannot keep this job with these hours. Can you change the hours? And she said, no, we can't. I said, well, then I'm going to look for another job. And when I find one, I will give you 2-week notice. And I did. With more pay. This company offered me their job, and they're paying me like $5 an hour more. They're in Renton, 6:30 to 3:30. I go back to meetings. And that was a time when I had to sit there, and I liked my job. I liked the trucking company job. I like the job I have now, but I liked the trucking company job a lot. And the people there were a lot nicer. It was just a really great company. But there comes a time in Alcoholics Life where you have to realize what's more important. Because if I don't have AA, I don't have a job. I don't have a car. I don't have the friends I have. I got my friend, some of my friends are here tonight, I don't have anything. I know myself because I've built my life up and tore it down. I am too fat and old and comfortable to be tearing my life down again and going back out there and trying to, do what everybody's doing again. I can't do it. I've gotten too comfortable. When they talk about, an easier, softer way. Okay, now my son, let's go to today. My son has been doing fentanyl. My son has been living on the streets in a tent. He's been to treatment a couple times. One, he went to a really nice treatment center, and then he went to now he's in a treatment center again. It's over on Paulsbo. He actually left that treatment center for a couple days, then went back because it's cold. It's like, when I drove him from the detox center in Burlington to Paulsbo, I went around the long way, like 7 hours, so I could talk to him. He knows what I'm talking. He knows that what I'm talking about is true. He knows everything about me. He knows I was a prostitute out there. He knows I've been to prison. He was a child when that happened. He had to go through that with me and be very embarrassed in school. He knows everything about me. So he knows when I tell him something about the drugs that I'm not just lying. And I've told him, every time you go out, you get worse. It gets worse and everything, and he's like, I know. And that's gotten so bad where he had a rat in his tent. His roommate was a rat, and I talked to him and he says he knows. And then you know what I got to do? I got to go make another amends to my dad because I had to make an amends to my dad several times because as I stay sober and I go through other things, I realize what I put my poor dad through. And at least I have Facebook where I can look at Facebook on Messenger and see what my son's doing. He hasn't been on there for 24 hours. I can start worrying. Well, now he's in treatment. I don't. My dad didn't have that. My dad had me calling him once in a while to ask for money, and then he knew I was alive. That's it. So I've made more amends to my dad, my parents and stuff, I told my son that this is, I believe, is an easier, softer way. It is. To stay drunk and live the way that I lived or the way that he was living is so difficult. And don't get me wrong, this is not easy. It's simple. But like if you go far down the scale as I went, I had a lot of issues my first year. I had 3 ways of solving problems: cry, swear, or do absolutely nothing. That was it. I one time told the SSI lady to fuck off because she wanted more paperwork. I just sent her a bunch of paperwork. Fuck off, and I hung up on her. And then I called my dad, crying. He goes, "You hung up on the SSI lady? You're trying to get something from them and you hung up on her?" So he got the number and he called her back and he goes, "Do you see what her problem is now? Do you see why she needs some help?" And he goes, "Okay, yes, I'm signing off on all the papers, Because I had screwed my brain up. Just what I thought was true was not true. And it's like when you mentioned, when you're surrounding yourself by everybody doing what you're doing, okay, it's really easy to think, this is normal. This is where I'm supposed to be. It's the same when you're sober. If you surround yourself with everybody that's doing the same thing you're doing, staying sober, living life, trying to improve themselves, trying to help the other alcoholic, trying to be a good person, you know what? That will happen to you. It can't help but happen. It's like, stick with the winners or whatever. That doesn't mean you stick with only people that are sober, because you have to go help the alcoholic. However, you don't do it by yourself. You do it with somebody else, But it's like, the only people that I know that drink are members of my family. Can't help that, It's my sister, but they're not alcoholics. How much time have I got?
3 minutes.
What? Really?
3 minutes.
3 minutes. So I know my family is an alcoholic. I went and spent time with them this one year, and my sister said, "Well, we have a lot of booze up there." I'm telling you right now, you guys, my sister drinks a glass of wine, a glass of water, glass of wine, a glass of water. What is up with that? These guys, the Canadians, come over and they're on their porch and they're having a beer, and I'm thinking, I've had that beer for 20 minutes. Maybe they don't know there's more inside. So I go, "Hey, you guys, there's more beer inside, They're like, "No, we're fine." I go, "There's a whole refrigerator full of alcohol in there." And my nephew's like, "Kathy, quit trying to push the alcohol. They don't drink like I do." My nephew got up one morning and he had a big drink, and I thought, here it goes. I'm going to see it now. A couple hours later, I go, where's Scotty? And his wife goes, "Oh, he had that drink and he had to go lay down." What? So when we're going home, my sister goes, "Did the alcohol bother you?" I go, "I'll tell you what bothered me." And she goes, "The drinking?" And I go, "The fact that you guys don't know how to drink. You guys do not drink." It wasn't the alcohol that bothered me. It wasn't the drinking that bothered me. It was the fact that you guys don't drink like I do. And it didn't bother me. What it did was reinforce the fact that I am an alcoholic and you are not. And she goes, "That's what bothered you?" I go, "Yeah, it bothered me. It did bother me, because it bothered me that, why me for it? It didn't really, it didn't really bother me, but it just, I guess the only way I can say is it reaffirmed the fact that they don't drink like I do. They have no idea how to drink like I do. They have no idea or understand anything about what I'm talking about when I talk about stuff. They like to hear it. Oh yeah, when Jennifer and I went over to my sister's house, there was this little thing on the counter. And Jennifer goes, "Hey, what's this?" And my sister goes, "Oh, that's for wine. If you don't finish the bottle of wine, you can put that back in there." And she goes, "That's the stupidest thing I've ever seen in my life." And it was. You know why? Who saves wine? It's like you open it, you drink it. Why do you need something like that, But obviously normal drinkers, they save wine. They don't drink the whole thing. They have to come up with something to put in there to make sure it stays fresh. Who knew? Not me. Because that's not the way I drank. If the seal was broken, it was gone, or the seal was intact, because I hadn't caught it yet. There's none of this half drinking or water in between or mixing your drinks, because I didn't drink because I liked the taste. I drank to get drunk. And now I know that I have to put as much effort into my program I've put everything above I put everything below my program. My program has to be above everything. My job, my family, everything. Because without it, I have nothing. You know, it's like my parents, when they'll call me, hey, you want to go, you know, we take me to the airport. I check my schedule. Yes, I can. Or no, I can't. I have an AA meeting. And they don't say, oh, can you not go to it? No. When they were living in Las Vegas, I went to some meetings there. And my dad didn't say, oh, do you still have to go to these? No. He's like, okay, I'll drive you. You know, am I take the car? Because they like who I am. I'm around to drive my parents to the airport. When I say I'm going to pick you up like I did this morning, I'm going to pick you up at 4 o'clock in the morning and take you to the airport so you can get on that flight at 5. I'm there. I'm there at 4 o'clock in the morning. And they can count on me. So my life is not perfect. I live with a alcoholic who doesn't have a sponsor and who's not drinking. I'm working the program. Oh my God, life is interesting. When I first met her, I was her sponsor, and I ended up moving in with her, and I think that probably was a mistake, but I signed a lease, so I'm going to stick it out. But my life is a lot better than it's ever been. I have my class of problems are, oh God, did I pay that hospital bill twice? Which I did. I paid this stupid hospital now. Now Highline Hospital has, oh, you have a credit of $30, you know. You know, that's my biggest problem now is, oh, in March, I've got my car tabs on my new car due. I wonder how much they're going to be. It's in March. I have nothing to sit around and worry about because my son is in treatment. And when he's not in treatment, you know what I've learned to do? God take care of him. And it took a long time to get there. When he left the last time a couple weeks ago, he called me and I said, you're on your own. Deleted him from Facebook, wouldn't be able to watch him. He went back, I put him back on there. You know, so when I'll go visit him, you know, I told him I'll come visit you. I'm not going to try to control him. Not anymore. If he lives, he lives. If he dies, he dies. There's nothing I can do about it. But I will stay sober. I want to enjoy my life. I'm over 60. I spent a lot of my time, wasted a lot of my time. I want to enjoy my life, and I enjoy it now. I enjoy it instead of cursing God to burn my house down. You know? So if you're listening and you're new, don't give up. It's not easy. It's simple, but it's not easy. But it gets better. Every day gets better and better. Sometimes you'll have to get a little bit worse, but it gets better. And today when I have a problem, I don't go right straight to, oh, I got to have a drink. Oh, I got to have a hit. I don't. And I don't go to, I got to cry, swear at somebody. I actually can solve my problems, which was a really big accomplishment in my life. So thank you very much.
Thank you.